So, spoilers for Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, if you haven't beaten the almost 3-month-old game at this point, go do that. Alright, everyone seen the ending? Good. So at the end of Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, we're left in a strange limbo world, where to 90% of our party, Aerith is dead, just like in the original Final Fantasy VII. The exception is, of course, Cloud, who can see and hear Aerith just fine. He doesn't seem cut up at all about her death, and to him, Aerith is still alive and well. Whether that's actually the case is open to interpretation currently, with the new multiverse strangeness established by FF7 Rebirth, there being potentially multiple Aeriths, but we do know Nanaki at least feels Aerith's presence somewhat during that ending. So it's going to be pretty important at some point during Final Fantasy VII Returns, Rises, Revengeance, whatever. This video isn't about some big theory about the nature of Aerith, life and death, and multiverses in FF7 Rebirth and beyond. That's for another video. This is about a parallel that immediately struck me when I saw Aerith walking and talking after her death. Yes, this is a video about why I think Nojima, Nomura, Kitase and co. decided to go this specific route for Aerith, to give her dialogue and, for lack of a better word, a ghost after she's supposed to be dead, because doesn't that feel weirdly familiar? Haven't we seen this before, kinda? Yeah, okay, the seasoned FF7 fans among you are probably ahead of me here, but let me hold all your hands regardless. By the way, you look lovely today. In the original FF7, it was heavily talked about back in the day that you could see Aerith, or Eirias as she was known then's, ghost once she died throughout certain parts of the game. A lot of this turned out to be Mewers under the truck style school ground rumor, but it is actually true that a deliberate event and coincidental glitch mean you can see Aerith's ghost in the Sector 7 slums in the original FF7. After you return to Midgard, it is possible to witness Aerith in the church, but she flickers and disappears before Cloud can get close enough to her. I'm going to become like all the best YouTubers and directly quote a wiki here, but as stated on the Final Fantasy wiki, witnessing Aerith tending to the flowers is a one-time event. The point in the story where the Aerith event activates in the church is after defeating Genova Life, but the player cannot yet return to Midgard at this point. The first time the event can actually be seen in a normal playthrough is after Cloud has been saved from Mideel. Isn't that interesting? Well, you can't get there immediately after Genova Life. That is when it is triggered. And similarly, when you defeat the newly named Genova Life Klinger, the clinging on to life, is when the Aerith ghost scenes start popping off, when Aerith appears to Cloud and nobody else. Within the game's debug room, the player can find options for triggering the Aerith tending to the flowers in the church event. If the after Aerith's death option is selected in the debug room, the game will teleport the player to the church where Aerith will be tending to the flowers. So again, this is clearly something they actually set up and did on purpose, not just a glitch. But the event can never occur if the player talks to the innkeeper during the Karn flashback and selects the option, let me know the situation of the town, after talking to him a second time. It is unknown why this stops the event from occurring, since it is unrelated to Eirias and the church. That the event can be prevented by talking to the innkeeper is likely a programming error. So that's where the glitch comes in. The glitch is to make sure the ghost doesn't appear for some reason. The glitch is not related to whether Eirias is a ghost or an accidental summoning of her model when you re-enter the church. No, that ghost is very intentional. Whether it's literally the ghost of Aerith, or more so Cloud's memories of her, I don't know, but given that we do have appearances from Aerith in the compilation of Final Fantasy VII, including in Advent Children, where she is somewhat of a life stream ghost, she still has her consciousness within the life stream, I think it's likely this is a harbinger of that concept. The evidence makes it clear there definitely is an intention for this to be a proper event in the original FF7, not just some strange loading error. However, in a fun twist of fate, there is also unrelated, completely cut content in the original FF7 that to me was always an even more curious mystery when I was a child. One that I think has provided the FF7 Remake Trio's story team an opportunity to make a reference almost 30 years in the making. I mean, damn, it will be 30 years in the making by the time the third part comes out. Through hacking, game shark codes, etc., it's possible to add Aerith back to your party in Final Fantasy VII. If you do so, there are occasions when you go to locations that a live Aerith never visited where she has unique dialogue, such as after snowboarding where she states she's sick of this, and notably she whispers back and forth with Cloud in Rocket Town, amongst again some less more notable occasions, or indeed dialogue that could be generic. I think the true answer for why this is that during development, sequences like snowboarding and Rocket Town didn't have a firm chronological placement yet. Maybe snowboarding in the Icicle Inn would have been pre-City of of the ancients. And so it was made possible that Aerith could have dialogue in those situations, perhaps in some build of the game where they were accessible prior to her death, or just in case they changed things around. Regardless, that left the shadow of Aerith's ghost hovering over the fandom, especially in the late 90s and into the 2000s. The combined weight of an actual Aerith ghost event and the haunting feel to Aerith being able to appear again after her death just by adding her back to your party with cheats left many wondering at the time if Aerith could be brought back from the dead. That brings us to Final Fantasy VII Rebirth. While I believe there is much more to the quote-unquote alive Aerith at the end of Rebirth, and indeed I believe there may be multiple Aeriths, multiple Sephiroths, etc., I think specifically Cloud being the only one to really be able to see this survived Aerith at the end of Rebirth may in fact intentionally fold in a nod, a wink at the camera from Nojima, Nomura, Kitase et al. To that huge internet rumor mill surrounding the ghost and resurrection of Aerith in the original FF7. After all, in Rebirth, only Cloud can see Aerith after the Forgotten Capital, and wouldn't you know it, it's only Cloud, our player character, that sees the ghost of Aerith in the Sector 7 slums in the original Final Fantasy VII. Other NPCs, including cut dialogue, make reference to thinking they saw Aerith's ghost, but it's much more fleeting, similar to how Nanaki also feels her presence in Rebirth's ending, but she isn't clearly in front of him like she is to Cloud. And Rebirth's ending quite literally creates dialogue for Aerith, dialogue that interacts with Cloud after she is supposed to be dead, exactly like that cut dialogue from FF7 would have done. However, instead of unintentionally, this time it's done with clear intention. It's been pretty obvious from the start of Remake and throughout Rebirth. One of the core things, one of the core differences in the remade timeline or timelines is that schism of Aerith's death, something that Cloud accepts in the original game, but almost seems to be fighting against all throughout Remake and Rebirth. He sees a vision of Aerith's death in Remake. Before Aerith dies, we get a whole sequence spending more time with her in another version of Midgar. Originally, Final Fantasy VII made Aerith's death a huge surprise, but of course it is now something so well known to basically anyone that's ever heard of Final Fantasy VII, they flipped the script, making Aerith's death a daunting inevitability. Every interaction you have with Aerith, you are reminded where this game is heading towards, and that's why that schism between Cloud saving and not saving Aerith is such a good cliffhanger. And I think that's emblematic of the whole point of Rebirth and what I think is a nod to the ghost of Aerith and the cut content. I personally don't think this whole thing is somehow one giant reference to Aerith's ghost and her cut posthumous dialogue, but I absolutely think as the story of the remake trilogy was coming into focus, someone, perhaps Nojima, perhaps Kitase, perhaps Nomura, paused and thought about a part of the fandom of their games, the original FF7 in particular, which they seem to be putting so much effort into rewarding those longtime fans, and realized he had the opportunity to do basically the funniest thing ever. Take something that is half real, half cut content, but long posted about, theorized about, clung onto for hope from a fandom that wanted Aerith to live, and turn it into part of a key difference in the remake trilogy. It would kind of be like if they made a Final Fantasy VIII 2 and Squall actually died this time. Anyway, it's just a fun idea, a more metatextual look at Aerith kinda surviving her death at the Forgotten Capital, and a fun potential reference I haven't seen anyone else bring up yet. I definitely don't think it's supposed to like explain Ghost Aerith or the cut dialogue. It's not like retroactively it turned out that, oh my god, there was timeline stuff in the original FF7, but I do find it a very fun coincidence, if nothing else, that occurred to me while I was playing the ending of Rebirth. If you like this video, you could definitely like the video and leave a comment mocking my theory below. Growing a new channel is hard, you know. And to that end, if you want to hear more of my silly musings on video games, anime, and beyond, I'd really appreciate it if you subscribed and stayed tuned to Karn Ultra. Let's mosey.